Yeah.
Okay. നമുക്ക് തുടങ്ങാം. എല്ലാവർക്കും നമസ്കാരം. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for taking time. ഈ സുഗന്ധ വേളയിൽ എല്ലാവരും നിങ്ങളുടെ സമയം എടുത്ത് join ചെയ്തതിനായിട്ട് നന്ദി. Especially great thanks to our global chairman Johnny Chetai and our global vice chairman Mr. Rajiv Nair to join, and respected other WMC officials across the globe and also office bearers from Malaysia to join this event. Truly appreciate. So today's session is going to be about cybersecurity, and we have a speaker who's Mr. Jairam Ramesh. He's been in the cybersecurity business for a very long time. So I now pass our stage to Mr. Bimal Pillai, who's the senior member of WMC Malaysia, who will now welcome you all officially and also give the introduction about Jairam Ramesh for this particular event. Thank you all. Thank you for your great time. Bimal, over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Hello all, and welcome to this seminar on cybercrime by WMC Malaysia. I would like to convey a special thanks to Rajiv Chetan. I think he's the one who's kind of who has kind of initiated the whole everything over here. So a special thank to him, and also to WMC India and WMC Global for the representation and support. I can really see that now WMC Malaysia over here, I'm feeling getting a global thing, because I can really see representation from all around the world, which I'm thanks to all for that. Now coming to this, significance of knowledge in cybercrime needs not be explained to most of us. The knowledge in cybercrime, its targets and perpetrators are important to identify adequate cybersecurity to defend against increasing inherent and residual risk driven by global connectivity and usage of cloud services. Gone are the days when simple firewalls and antivirus softwares could have been perceived sufficient as security measures. So now we have amongst us an expert, Mr. Jairam Ramesh. He currently heads the group cybersecurity for AIA with over a decade of experience in cyber and information security domain. Prior to this role in AIA, he was leading the cybersecurity incident response for a major F1. His areas of expertise spreads across security monitoring and response, cyber intelligence, digital forensics, and adversary attribution. He also has extensive work experience with law enforcement agencies, critical national infrastructures, and regulatory bodies. So I'm pretty sure that we all have a lot to gain through the presentation that we'll be just seeing. So I'm not going to take more of your time. I'll pass the stage to our able speaker, Jairam Ramesh. Over to you, Jairam.
Hey, thank you, Violeta. Just give me a second while I share my screen. Lex, I think you have disabled screen sharing. I got it.
I've enabled it now. Please do share. Thank you. May I humbly request everyone to go on mute other than Jay, please, so we can hear his presentation really crisp and clear. Thank you, everyone.
All right, fantastic. First of all, thanks to WMC in Malaysia for having me. The topic I wanted to talk about today is something which is now gaining a global recognition, which is cybercrime. And why it's called behind the ones and zeros is for the simple matter of fact, anything and everything that we do computer network related at the end of the day ends up as ones and zeros, because that's how we communicate, right? Even if it is optic fibers or anything else. So without further ado, I just want to be covering on what are the topics that I'll be talking about today. I'm going to be giving an introduction to cybercrime. So I'm trying to stray away from the normal cases that we have of, let's say, what is a malware or how a WhatsApp gets hacked, etc. And I'm trying to focus a bit more in terms of incidents which hopefully some of you would have heard about, some of you would not have heard about, and why is there a big hoo-ha or a fuss about cybercrime. There'll be a lot of myth busting, which is notions that have developed about the industry and the people involved in the world. So I'm going to pull in wherever required a bit of my experience to try and tell you how things actually do work. So as a flow, I'm going to be running through an overview of the different types of cybercrimes. Again, not the typical ones that you hear about in newspapers or magazines. I'm going to touch a bit about who are the players or the power players, the main folks behind some of the notorious or the biggest attacks that the world has seen. I'm quite sure people would want to know a bit more about dark web or what is a deep web, etc. So let me cover that a bit over there. And final part of it would be on monetizing. So we know that there is a whole bunch of attacks that happen. How do people actually make money? Or how is that money then converted into a legal usable material substance? So if you've been to any of my talks previously, I'd like it to be interactive. So wherever required, feel free to raise any questions. I'm happy to take them up. And having said that, I also wanted to touch a bit more on what I will not be covering. So I won't be talking about cybersecurity. So there's a whole difference between cybercrime and cybersecurity. I'm not going to be doing any defense against the dark adolescents, which is I'm not going to be talking about, well, let's say you have a DDoS attack or a malware attack. How do I prevent it, or what are the steps I should be taking? That's not something which I had in the slide, because if I do that, then it's not going to be getting over in an hour's time. So I haven't put in anything, but that doesn't stop me from answering any of your questions. So if you have anything, happy to take them up. Again, I just wanted to stress that opinions are not on behalf of my company. So I will not be answering any questions on behalf of what my organization would think. And again, comparisons of different organizations, that's not something I would like to do as well. All right, any questions? If not, then
we are fine.
Let's
please
start with the introduction.
Thank you.
Great. So when it comes to cybercrime, right, can I have a basic understanding of what do you think you know about of cybercrime? Anyone?
Phishing,
Okay.
hacking into phones.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, what you said is true, right? So cybercrime is nothing more than a standard crime that involves a computer or network, which is the basic definition of a crime. And it can or cannot be used for harming someone. It could be driven by a purpose or a motive, or it could be something that someone did out of fun. Now, depending on how serious of a crime it is and which part of the world you are, how you're going to be treated for that activity would be different. And a reason why I always wanted to speak about cybercrime is everyone knows Microsoft is a $1 trillion company. But then when you look at cybercrime as a business, it is a $1 trillion industry, even before Microsoft did. 2015, the annual cost that was lost to cybercrime is around $3 trillion. 2016, we're already looking at more than $6 trillion. So 2021. And by the time we hit 2025, the projection is around $10.5 trillion. Now, the money or the cost factor that I put in over here is the money that's actually lost as a result of a cybercrime activity. And looking at that apart, now this has also driven a whole entire industry called information or cybersecurity. And that industry is now at around $170.4 billion worth. And that is a projection as per 2022. And given the way things have moved around this pandemic, it's expected to hit that particular target even before that. And another point, which I also wanted to bring it up, which people do not see the relation, is about cyberbullying. So when they did a survey of 1,000 parents, 60% of the parents with children aged between 14 to 18 reported that they were being cyberbullied between 2018 and 2021. Now, again, depending on which country you are from, this can be a serious concern. And somehow or the other, we don't tend to look at it from that perspective. A classic example, one of the most common videos that is popular in YouTube, especially in India, is what they call as roasting or trolling people. Now, there are countries where somebody does that and you file a mental harassment case against that person, that can be considered as a cyberbullying, right? Even though we don't actually give it that much of seriousness, it tends to impact a lot of the kids at that age. And I actually got some more details on actual incidents that has happened. Sorry, if you're not speaking, can I request you to mute your mic? So cybercrime as a whole has increased by around 600% since the beginning of the global pandemic. And one of the main reasons why this happened was people were working from home, right? And half of the businesses or organizations, to save up on costs, set up their infrastructure and security controls to protect their organization space. Now, when you move an asset, which is like a computer, away from your organization and into an open network, that just exposes it to a different. Hello?
Yeah, you muted yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody muted me. Okay. So cybercrime as a whole.
Accidentally, it's me.
Yeah.
I was trying to mute everyone, so apologies.
No worries. I don't know where you guys lost me, but I'm just repeating the last one once again. So like I said, because of the pandemic, a lot of people started working from home, and that actually saw to a surplus increase in cybercrime by around 600%. And why is cybercrime so important, or why do people actually worry too much about it? I actually got one slide. So if you can look at my screen, it's called as 1 minute. So this has been there from 2015, 2014 onwards, where people try to map what happens in 1 minute of the internet. So there are at least 19 million iPhone texts and 4.7 million YouTube videos, 694,444 people scrolling Instagrams, 2.5 million Snapchats, 59 million WhatsApp messages. There are at least 1.6 million swipes in Tinder, 764,000 hours watched in Netflix, and at least a 4.1 million Google search. So that just shows you the volume of dependency we have today towards the internet. And if you actually cross-compare it with the numbers and stats, just 5 years back, it was way lower than this. Again, another thing which people always tend to ask is, so I am just a normal person. I sit at home. I don't have anything to worry about. Am I targeted? So for that purpose, I basically wanted to have this slide. People have a misconception that the people who are targeted are CNIs, which are basically critical national infrastructure, like your utility, power, water, etc. Large organizations, government agencies, medical centers, financial institutions. So that is a misconception that people have, that these are the people who are actually targeted. Well, the fact of the matter is, pretty much everyone has got a target on their back. So there have been cases where, let's say, a kid who was who had recently turned around 16 or 17, and she went in to take a driving license, only to find out that her driving license has already been issued, right? And when they found out, it was mapping back to her exact same social security number. And it then turned out, and this is an actual story, that she had exposed a social security number when she was a kid to some random stranger who they met over an online gaming portal. So you never know when it actually hits you unless and until it actually comes in, right? And another thing that I also wanted to say is cybercrime is the same as conventional crime. The only difference is it's using a digital medium. And how I learned this is from my grandmother. So when I first got my first job, in Microsoft, go back home, my grandmother was asking me, what do you do for a living? What are you going to be doing for a living? I said, I'm going to be doing cybersecurity. She was like, what is cybersecurity? And at that time, when you have a person who is like 45, 50 plus in age, explaining cybersecurity to them is going to be challenging, right? So I was then telling her an example of what is phishing. So we told them about people send you an email, you then go to that email, you'll see a web page URL, you go to that web page URL, and people type in their details, and that gets compromised. I mean, I had to translate it into Tamil for her, but pretty much that was what I was telling her. And she was like, yeah, but that's not new. I was like, what do you mean it's not new? You don't even log into computers. That's when she was telling me that during her childhood, they used to be getting postcards, which was something similar. People send you postcards asking you for details, and you then reply back by postcard, and it actually ends up impacting them. A classic example of spam was when people used to send postcards saying that you need to forward it to 10 more people, otherwise you'll have bad luck. So that's when it actually started making me think that maybe digital crime is not anything different. It's just traditional standard crime that is just using a digital medium. So Mythbusters, couple of things that I love to freak out to people is not every cybercrime is performed by a hacker. So people have a wrong convention of who is a hacker. To be honest, all of us are hackers. You don't need to use a computer to be a hacker. Anytime you modify something to do something else, you are hacking that, right? And I'll tell you in the context of cybercrime where the hacker term was actually used and how it got stuck up in the industry. So like I said, to be a hacker, you don't have to be computer savvy. You don't need to read lines of green matrix codes. Trust me, half of the people who are doing hacking, they are not even seeing a single bit of code, or they don't even know how to code. Not all cyber criminals sit in a dark room and wear a sweaty hoodie all day long. That is not exactly how it is. Once I was in US, and this lady comes up to me and said, so how often do you guys change your hoodie? It doesn't work that way. I mean, it's just like normal people sitting inside normal offices doing their things. Yeah, but thanks to Hollywood, I know that my job looks cooler than it is. At the same time, it has also given people a lot of wrong impression of what cybersecurity is all about. So moving on to evolution of cybercrime, right? So we know cases or stories that came up in the newspaper since 2000, 2010, 2000s, that's about it. But if you look back at history, which I'm particularly fond of, it can even go all the way back to the 1900s. So 1903 is considered the first actual case of hacking, where Neville Maskelyne, who was basically a magician and an inventor, he disrupts John Ambrose Fleming. So John Ambrose Fleming is known for wireless telegraph technology. So when he was going to do a demonstration of that, what Neville did was he was basically inserting Morse code messages using the auditorium's projector, using just a cap. In 1932, a Polish cryptologist, they broke back the Enigma machine code. So Enigma machine was basically used for ciphering communication text, which is being sent across during wartime. And this was broken in 1932. 1939, Alan Turing and his team, they came up with something called as BOMB. BOMB was a machine which was capable of brute forcing the Enigma code as well. Moving down, 1940s, René Camille was considered as one of the first ethical hacker. So when the Nazis were using the census of France to try and target the Jews, what René did, I mean, he was one who was responsible for running the punching card system. So within the punching card system, they also used to have a particular category, which tells you which religion, which place are you from. Knowing that the Nazis were going to be using the census data to find out the Jews and push them to death camps, René hacked his own program to ensure that whatever you do, whether you are a Jew or not, it does not get printed on your punching card. So that was considered as the first case of ethical hacking. 1949, the gentleman in the picture, John von Neumann, who has contributed a lot to computations and mathematics, he actually predicted that this was exactly 6 years after the first computer was done. He actually predicted that there would be a time where computer programs could reproduce. And that is basically the theory of our underlying computer viruses. 1950s, a blind 7-year-old boy came up with something quite innovative that actually led to millions of loss. So he found out, if you look at the old machines, if there are people from that time, they know that when you call up a trunk call or when you do an international long distance calls, you basically connect it and then you are basically charged for it as the time goes. So in 1957, there was this blind 7-year-old boy who identified that whistling the fourth E and middle C, which was basically a frequency of around 2,600 hertz, it could interfere with AT&T's telephone systems. It just so happened that, I forgot the serial company, but there was a serial company in the US, which also had a free whistle that came out in the same frequency. People were then using that to start doing phone phreaking. Now, I can't go in depth about what phone phreaking is, how does it work. Alex, can we mute that line? Thank you. So yeah, basically that was how phone phreaking started. And there was no way for AT&T to stop the attack, but it eventually died off in the 1980s. 1960s, the first reference to malicious hacking, which was basically in MIT student newspaper, where they basically termed telephone hackers as malicious hacking. And 1967 was the first time when IBM brought in a whole bunch of students to take a look at the APL network. And that is considered as the first case of known penetration testing. In 1970s was when ARPANET came out, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, which was pretty much a precursor to the internet built by Department of Defense. 7 years after it came live, Kevin Metnick, who is now a world-renowned computer professional, he basically hacked into the ARC, which was having operating systems, and started making copies of that software. 1980s, we saw it move from ARPANET to internet. Ian Murphy, aka Captain Zap, in 1981 was the first cracker to be tried and convicted. So what he did was he broke into AT&T and he changed the internal clocks that metered billing rates. So basically, people who were calling in the midday, they were getting the discounted rates from after evening hours. 1983 was when people said that let's start working together as groups, and Kilobaud was formed. So Kilobaud then led to forming of multiple hacking groups, and consecutively in the next decade, it's converted into organized crime groups. 1986 was the first known major case of a hack, where Marcus Hess, he basically hacked 400 military computers, including mainframes of the Pentagon, and he sold that information to KGB. If you love to read books, there's a book called as The Cuckoo's Egg. I highly recommend that. It covers that incident in detail. 1986, the first computer virus, which was called Brain. And if you see the two gentlemen in the picture, Amjad and Basit Farooq, two brothers from Pakistan, they were the first people who actually created a virus. Even though it was not meant to be a virus, it turned out to be one. 1988 was when Morris Worm took over ARPANET. So there was basically a person who wanted to find out how many computers were connected to ARPANET. He wrote a code and it just went wild. They couldn't stop it. It hit all the devices and it took down a lot of these machines. But one of the plus points of that attack was it led to the first computer emergency setup in Carnegie Mellon University. Same year, in 1988, First National Bank of Chicago, they lost 70 million in computer theft, which was basically an embezzlement or attempts to move funds by 4 employees within the bank. Uh, 1990s, fast forward in time, so the entire world starts to go online. Similarly, towards the end of 1980s, we also saw antivirus come in, and in 1990s, within 3 to 4 years of the antivirus coming out, we started seeing polymorphic viruses, much like our current day COVIDs. These were viruses that kept on mutating and changing itself, while the original attack payload was kept to its core. So what that helped the virus to do is antiviruses could not pick it up and they couldn't clean it up as well. So same year, we saw a whole bunch of viruses and malware numbers exploding. Emails came up, people started signing up for mails. AOL and Newsnet were the major ones who was providing public email addresses. And given the volume with which people started taking into the internet, there was massive arrests happening for hacker groups across the countries. 1999 Melissa virus, which was considered as one of the fastest, still considered as one of the fastest spreading viruses, which caused a damage of around $80 million to fix. And yeah, so pretty much things were going quite rampant, right? And the countries realized by then that we need to start having cyber laws in place. There were hundreds of advisories and patches released by Microsoft and the other major operating system providers. And people then started thinking of, let's start making it official that doing these activities are really bad. I mean, definitely there were a huge number of countries which did not support it then as well. Yeah, so this is a bit of a trivia point. In 1987 was the first commercial antivirus, and till date, there are 3 people who actually claim for the position of creating the first AV. You have Ultimate Virus Killer, Node Antivirus, and Virus Scan. So, I mean, well, personally, I don't know who is the one that actually created it first, but there are 3 people who claim to have the first AV. Moving on. 20,000s. Now, anybody who has got the computer during that time know about the Y2K bug and also the I love you worm. Both of them go hand in hand. If you had an email address in the 2000s, I'm quite sure you would have received the I love you worm, which installed in your machine, and then it would propagate out by sending other people an attachment with the word I love you.exe. 2001, something new came up where users no longer needed to download files. So if you visit a website, malware gets installed in the background, which is nowadays called drive-by downloads. 2003, Slammer worm became quite a sensation because within 10 minutes, it infected close to 360,000 computers. And the total loss was somewhere between 950 million to 1.2 billion in a span of 5 days. A concept of zero-day attacks became popular, where people were writing exploits on codes that were not yet patched or were not aware of. Hacktivist groups such as Anonymous, they came into form in 2003. 2005, that's when botnet attacks started, where people could understand that, let's say I have 5 friends who have computers, I can convert those computers into bots and get them to do what I want. So botnets introduced the concept of anonymity. It also gave people a large processing power and the compute power to start big scale attacks. 2006 was the first registered case of VoIP hacking. 2007, cyber attacks on Estonia. This was an attack by the Soviet, where they literally crippled Estonia in all ways possible. There was attacks on the media, the banking system went down, traffic lights, power grids. The entire country was thrown into chaos because the internet literally shut down. Same year in 2007, FBI ran an operation called Bot Roast, which identified that there were at least 1 million botnet victims by 2007. An Indian hacker, Pankaj Kumar Singh, hacked the UN website at the time. And in 2008 was the first incident where people realized that cybercrime could be as equivalent as a cyber war. Russia did a cyber attack on Georgia. And once the Georgia network was all crippled, it was followed by a physical attack. So throughout this period, if you look at it, right, the 2000s was when Korea, China, US, Russia, they all started embarking on the cyber race. They started looking at building capabilities within the military, within the Department of Defense to actually target other organizations and other countries. There was a significant rise in cybercrime arrests, and people realized that piracy is now a new worldwide issue. People were shipping audios, MP3s, videos, movies, etc. So if you are a 2000s kid, you know Napster and Audio Galaxy. Both of them were used for peer-to-peer sharing of media or contents, even documents as well. And this was even before the BitTorrents and the uTorrents came into existence. 2010, something called Stuxnet happened. I got a whole slide on that, so I'm not going to be spending too much time on it, which shook the entire world of critical national infrastructure. 2011, perhaps the largest volume of credit card numbers and account details were exposed. Same year, there was an attack on Sesame Street YouTube channel, where for close to 22 minutes, pornographic contents were being streamed. Same year, PlayStation Network went offline. They also managed to lose 77 million accounts because of the attack. So on, right? I mean, so the entire year of 2010 actually had another implication. So countries, so corporates started getting fined by regulatory bodies. Edward Snowden reveals details about the US surveillance program. Yahoo was fined $35 million for failing to disclose a hack, which compromised 3 billion users, and a whole bunch of other things. I can go on and on it. But some of the key ones that I wanted to highlight was the Thailand ATM jackpotting on 21 ATMs. We actually understood that washing machine light bulbs and toasters can now do cyber attack. With the Mirai attack that happened, there was a massive leak on NSA tools, the WannaCry attack, Petya, Equifax breach, Deloitte breach, a whole bunch of things were happening around 2010. And I guess this was the decade which basically made people think that, right, I need to invest in cybersecurity. Because when I've been speaking to people and organizations in 2006, 2007 about cybersecurity, people were like, oh, okay, good to know, listen to hear, we are not going to be targeted. But nowadays, I don't even have to worry about asking people about finances or fundings for investment in cybersecurity. Everybody has that by default. If that is the case, let's look at 2020s. Well, Corona has most of us sitting at in the home. It did not stop the criminals. 2020, the New York Stock Exchange and the New Zealand Stock Exchange, had to be temporarily shut down because of multiple DDoS attack. Supply chain attack on SolarWinds, which led to a breach of multiple government agencies, especially in the US. Cathay Pacific was fined £500,000 over data breach disclosed in 2018. Indian scam centers, around 5 of them got exposed by by a cybersecurity researcher. Microsoft Exchange server data breach, which led to at least 25 million email accounts being compromised or the emails being shared across. Air India was also subjected to a cyber attack, where close to 4.5 million customer details were compromised. And in the last 1 month, we have had 2 major ransomware attacks. One was on the Colonial Pipeline, which shut down the US pipeline, and they ended up paying 5 million in ransom. On the meat company JBS, which paid $11 million in ransom for another cyber attack as well. This point of time, just stopping to ask any questions. If not, I'm just going to move on. So, with the interest of time, I'm just going to.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions towards the end, Jay. So,
sure.
So we have some experts already attending the event. So we'll look forward for much more questions towards the end. Thank you. Thank you.
So in terms of types of crime, right, I normally would like to classify it under 4 buckets. It's either criminal intention, it could be piracy, it could be insider abuse, or it could be social. Now, social criminal in the sense it could be because of espionage, carding, hacking, money laundering. It could even be for child pornography or skimming, etc. Piracy is more of unauthorized distribution of media and softwares, plagiarism, copyright infringements. Insider abuse is more of embezzlement, insider trading, information leaks, and system compromises. Similarly for social as well. Now, I know that I actually got a lot of things over here, but ideally, I would put it under two main categories, which I'm going to be talking about. Crime where an electronic device is used as a medium, or a crime where an electronic device is targeted. Now, before I talk about what are the types of incidents or events that are there, just give me a minute. There was something that I actually wanted to run through with you all is on the cyber attack kill chain. So this was a model proposed by Lockheed Martin. And the reason why I'm talking about it is pretty much any attack that happens or any attack that will happen can be mapped to this. It's a 7-stage process. So you have reconnaissance, where people actually start harvesting information, trying to get more details. You have weaponization, where people try and get the tools and the equipments ready in terms of doing it. Delivery is how the attack is delivered. Exploitation is when a system is exploited for its weaknesses. Installation is where you build a foothold on that organization. Command and control, or C2, is basically where you open up a channel to a remote machine or a remote computer with which you can control. And the last step is actions on objectives, which is basically acting on what you are there or why you compromise a particular machine for. Why is it useful is when you map back the events or activities that you see, you would always be able to find out which part of the kill chain are they on. MITRE has also got something called as an attack model, which is a more of a modernized version that you guys can Google and find out. It has got 11 stages compared to the 7-stage model presented by the cyber kill chain. Just to give you an idea of how it is, let's say, for example, a robber breaking into a house. It would be a reconnaissance would be the person trying to survey the house, trying to find out where is it, how is it located, etc. Weaponization is he takes a look at the door, he tries to take a look at the gate. He then comes up with these are the toolkits that I need to go into the house. Delivery is how does he gain access into the house? Is it the front door or the back door, or is he coming through the roof or the window? Exploitation, let's say he's inside the house, he finds a safe, and he knows that that particular safe can be opened up using a particular technique that is exploiting the weakness of the safe. Installation, now assuming he is also, let's say, an agent who wants to overhear what is happening inside the house, he could install like bugging softwares or cameras, etc. And command and control center will not be applicable for a thief breaking into a house piece. But act on objectives would be the final part of stealing what was there in the house. Now, if you compare that to a malware infection on, let's say, something like Alex Scott, it would be a similar environment. Person tries to find out how is that environment, what is there, and based on that, he then goes ahead, plans for the attack, delivers the attack, he exploits the weaknesses within the organization, installs all the malwares that he needs to, sets up a communication channel back so he can communicate to and fro with the environment. And then he acts on his objectives, which could be maybe getting the data out or trying to build a permanent access into the environment. Now, I just want to quickly run through. So Alex, just cautious of time, how much time do we have more? Alex? Maybe it's not there. So as a medium, I just want to start off with the first case, which is cybercrime, where it acts as a medium. The reason why I'm giving out these examples is for you to understand what are the scenarios where I could be potentially targeted, or where has it happened. I hope all of you know what is skimming, right? Skimming is copying data of credit and debit cards. Now I've got 3 images over there. The top 2 are basically skimming devices. One is the card reader, the other one is the keypad or the PIN card reader. Now, people always believe that skimming happens only in ATMs. That's not the truth. It also happens in point of sales or gas pumps as well. We have had many cases where people, when they actually give the card to the point of sales counter, they put it into the machine and immediately they swipe it at the bottom. So those things are also possible. The third image on the bottom below is basically a wireless skimmer. So an attacker doesn't need to come in and collect the device and connect back to the computer. He can remotely start getting the devices as well, information as well. So this is mostly used to get ATM information to build other ATM cards and exploit that account. If you have seen the movie Robin Hood in Malayalam, it's pretty much similar to that. Contactless fraud. So fast forward time, we come up with PayWave technologies. So our cards, we can just PayWave it. What that does is it's basically using RFID, same methodology used by remotes for unlocking cars. Around 2015, 2016, it became a common way of what they call as contactless fraud, where people can actually use RFID devices to get the information from the cards, or at the same time, look at the unlock frequency for the cars. But eventually, when the vehicle manufacturers started adding in more restrictions, it then became useless, and it is slowly fading out. It's still there, but slowly fading out. Another example is shopping frauds. This happens quite a long time, even in Malaysia. So I used to work in Cybercrime. One fine day, we had one of our neighboring towers in the office occupied by 300 to 400 Chinese people. They were apparently working for an e-commerce company. 4 or 5 months after they moved in, it was a massive move. They rented out all the apartments around the Cyberjaya area, and people were like staying over there. 5, 6 months, I think, after that, they had a massive police raid. Everybody was arrested, taken back to station. Turns out they were dealing with shopping frauds. So online shopping fraud has seen a drastic spike over the last few years. People order something, they might get something else. Now, if it is through something like Lazada or Shopee, you might be able to do claimbacks, otherwise you will not be. Another thing which has been quite interesting is we see online pop-up stores where the entire store itself is bogus. And one of the key ways people actually get people to visit these stores is using Facebook or Instagram advertisements. To start off with, I've actually got 3 shoes of Gucci over there in my photo. Just take a look at it. Which one do you think is real? Which one do you think is fake? And if we have made a guess, the first 2 are replicas. The last one is the real one. So it's pretty difficult if you don't know the brand in and out, which one is real and which one is fake. And that is what is being played on. Because people who can afford these brands, they normally go to the shop and choose what they want. And the ones who are normally trying to get it for a bargain are the ones who can't afford it. Dating scams, damsels in distress. So that has been something which has been going on for years. In online dating sites or Facebooks or social media, people start becoming friends. They ask you out and they start speaking to you. And all of the fun, one fine day, they'll start asking you for money. They're saying that they need to fly off, but they can't, etc. So there are whole different ways through which people actually make money out of that. In 2015, Ashley Madison, which is a site for extramarital affairs, suffered a data breach. And the results that came out was stunning. It was like people all over the world were there. And one of the companies had a website where people could put in the email address and find out if they were breached in the Ashley Madison case. But the company had to shut it down, given that a lot of these husbands were getting divorce cases because their wives were putting their email addresses to find out if he was registered or not. And I know you would be interested in this fact. So if you look at it, India, surprisingly, compared to the rest of the world, had equal proportions of men and women. Mumbai had 33,036 people, whereas Delhi had the highest number of members, which were 38,652. Interesting stats about India was that significant volume of the registered users were women, and significant volume of the registered women were fake. Impersonation of PEC is something which everybody needs to be aware of. People don't consider it serious because sometimes you might get emails coming up from, let's say, your CEO or your CFO asking you to process a payment or asking you to send these documents over, etc. Now, these impersonation emails are basically called as PEC. Now, if not carefully looked into, it can cause serious loss for companies. For example, Zoom Corporation in the US, they lost $30 million in 2014. Some of the crooks send an email as a CEO to an Austrian part manufacturer, FACC employee, requesting money for a new project. Net result, 42 million loss in 2016. Now, it's not just there, but even in the hardware. So people started moving into cryptocurrencies, right? So organizations start using hardware crypto wallets because online wallets can be stolen or broken up. It started getting so popular that cyber criminals have found up an elaborative scam that targets the ledger users. What they do is they send them a vulnerable hardware ledger wallet with an email from the CEO of the company saying that we are sorry, the one that you have is defective. Kindly migrate to this particular wallet and do everything. So by the time they actually do it, you find the cryptocurrency wallets being compromised. So what I have in the picture is an example of a fake ledger wallet, which is Nano. So the company is still struggling hard to fight against this. Sextortion emails where people are basically targeted by actors saying that we found your password and this is what it is. And we also found you visiting other websites. We have your details and we're going to publish this to the internet. So if you don't pay us money, we're going to be doing it. Trust me, a lot of people actually do pay money to these people. So these are what we call as a sextortion or scareware emails. Something unique that started coming up was even a couple of my friends, they started getting this 1 minute video call from an unknown source, right? On Facebook or Instagram, or I mean, it's either Facebook or YBER. So when they pick up this call, they see a blank screen and then it cuts off. The next thing is after 1 week, they get their photo, which who has called using technology merged into a pornographic video, and people start asking you money for that. So that is happening as well. So unless you're pretty sure of who's on the other line, do not accept video calls from unknown numbers. So there were another two things that I actually wanted to cover. One was trafficking and child porn. Unfortunately, these two are the gravest concerns. I was involved in child online protection for close to 2 or 3 years of my career. The amount of people who are actually spreading pedophile contents or grooming or trying to auction kids on the internet is huge. It still happens today, right? There are a lot of these closed door actions that happen within affiliate sites. Even in Middle East, there are some parts of the world where some parts of Middle East where they do auctioning or trading, exchanging of mates, but more of like how they would actually treat slaves. So those are some of the other activities that we actually see are a part of cybercrime that happens in today's world. Invocation, activism, and cyberbullying is another thing. So like I said, kids can be given access to the internet, but we need to ensure we have a proper governance and control on what they do. Unfortunately, nobody talks about cyberbullying that much as it needs to. A classic example was the Blue Whale Challenge from 2016. So if you look at the individual on the picture, Philip Budekin, he was 21 at 2016. He was a psychology student who actually came up with the Blue Whale Challenge. A lot of kids lost their lives. India government claims there are no casualties. At the same time, the Times of India have reported that a teen in Kerala hung himself to death because of the Blue Whale Challenge. So these are some of the instances where I think we need to put a bit more focus or effort on, but we don't. So these are some of the examples of cases where cyber crime can be registered where computer is a medium. Now, when a computer is a target, so if you look at the screenshot, that is an example of what we call as a web defacement, where somebody's web page is replaced with something else. Now, it's quite common, and I'll cover up with that when I talk about activism. Given the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly run through some of these slides. Stuxnet, as I mentioned, it was the first attack on a nuclear reactor. So if you look at the small image at the bottom, that's a Siemens PLC or a programmable logic controller. It is used in nuclear reactors for gas centrifuges. Just to give you an example or to summarize the whole thing, let's say you have a machine which is blowing a balloon. If you tell that machine, stop after 5 seconds, the balloon will not burst, right? So the machine blows for 5 seconds, it stops, the balloon goes back to normal. Now, assuming you basically embed a malware code, which tells the machine to not stop after 5 seconds, but at the same time, tell the person who's running the command that it has stopped. So what would happen is when the machine is running, after 5 seconds, the person who is operating it gets an alert saying that the machine is stopped, while in actual reality, the machine continues to blow and the balloon explodes, right? It's sort of a similar concept where at a particular temperature, you need to release the coolants into a nuclear reactor. So what this malware used to do was it tampered with the gauges and the readings so that the centrifuges continuously continued to spin and no coolants were getting released. So due to some good luck, the nuclear reactor did not blow up, but they found out as a part of that, at least 5 nuclear reactors in Iran were basically having this malware. So this was the first recorded massive case on critical national infrastructure, and Stuxnet was so popular that it came to different formats and there were different versions of it, like Tuku, Flame, Shamoon. And interestingly, one of the groups that was behind Stuxnet was called as the Equation Group. Now it is a country-sponsored group. Which country it is, I'll cover later on. And it also had partnership with another country as well. So if you Google for Operation Olympic Games and Stuxnet, you will know which countries were involved in this attack. Maroki Shah's sewage spill. This one is in Queensland, Australia. So people who have been to Queensland must have heard of the Maroki Shah. It's a very small town. It's around 450 square miles with a population of 130,000. So one of the employee who was there in the Maroki Shah, he basically was a plant project contractor. He had a disagreement with the employers, resigned, tried to get a job. They did not. He was getting frustrated and agitated with the company. So he left them, and from Jan 2000 till May 2000, they basically started experiencing multiple faults in the plant. As a result of which, one of the pump stations failed and released 264,000 gallons, which is close to 1 million liter of sewage into rivers, local parks, residential grounds. So the guy was actually caught. And he was operating these systems from near the factory. So he was basically using their own repeaters and radio stations to access these devices, which they also call as SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition systems, to play around with the pump stations and cause the spill. Surprisingly, 18th of June 2021, that was actually 3 days back, and hacker tried to poison a water treatment plant that served San Francisco Bay Area. So he was basically using the compromised username and password using a TeamViewer account. But thankfully, they picked it up the next day and there was no impact. Equation Group leaks. So there was this group called as Shadow Brokers. They basically exposed this group called as the Equation Group. It turned out that Equation Group was the nation state actor for United States, and it's suspected to be a branch of the NSA. So they had multiple releases and leaks that went over 2016 and 2017, but summarizing the whole slide into the basic essence, at least 80 tools which were proprietary to the National Security Agency of the US was published. People had access to it. And one of the major outcomes from that was the WannaCry ransomware. There was an exploit called Eternal Blue. That was the exploit that was used in WannaCry, Petya, and all the other attacks going forward. And another thing which requires a definite mention is Mirai, Shinowa Wari Okiru Mirai. Even though they all sound Japanese, it's got nothing to do with Japan, trust me. So this is the first malware that was targeting IoT devices. So what the malware did was, let's say you have your light bulbs and you might have your fancy TVs, washing machines, sometimes even toasters have got IoT. People rarely change the default factory username and password. So what the malware does was it basically scans, finds out how many of the devices are there on the internet, checks the firmware, tries to use the default username and password, logs in and infects them. And what then happened was all of this were connected to a single command and control center, based on which the attackers could then launch massive volumes of denial of service attacks on legitimate websites. So pretty much the attack on Krebs on security, 20th September 2016, when they started tracing back where was the attack coming from, it was coming from baby monitors, IoT devices, routers. They even had a case of a refrigerator as well. So if you're using IoT devices, make sure you change your default username and passwords. I mean, you can take a look at this image later on. It would tell you how the whole attack happened. And I guess this would be the last one before I move in to my next segment. So Bangladesh heist. So if you are not aware, there was a massive attack on the Bangladesh bank where literally $1 billion was attempted to be transferred out. Somehow or the other, most of this money was actually recovered. And the only reason why it got picked up was hackers misspelled the name of the NGO. Otherwise, the remaining money would have actually been gone out. So what happened was there were 35 fraudulent Swift instructions or the empty messages that were issued for an illegal transfer. Now, this was normally what banks do is when they have a Swift message, they basically print it out and they do a real-time checking of it. The malware was built in such a way that it does not send the messages to the printers. That information is tampered and it hides all evidences that a payment has been made. So only when it is time for the interbank closing, that is the time when they actually pick out by the time the money is normally sent out. And most of the times that I've seen in the past, these monies are sent to casinos where they are then converted into chips, which are then again converted into money again. That way you can't track them back. So I'm just going to quickly jump on to what are the power plays, right? Hacking. Now people ask what are the different types of hackers? They basically go by different colors. Right? So you would have black hat. Black hat are basically people who are considered malicious. They are criminals or they are basically part of a group or a gang who are motivated by money. White hats are the helpful kind who are basically trying to report or help us identify any issues. Gray hats are the ones who haven't made up their mind. Sometimes they try to help, sometimes they just turn the other way around and hit you on the back. Green hats are basically who are new to the hacking activity. Blue hat are the people who are basically the vengeful kind who are trying to seek revenge, or they could be even outside security professionals who have been hired to try and find weaknesses. Red hats are basically like Robin Hoods. They try and target the black hats to find out what has actually happened. And some of the special mentions would be script kiddies, who we see majority of the attackers are right now. So they are basically people who don't have any special skill set. They tend to run a couple of lines of scripts and codes and try to get lucky with the attack. We have nation state actors, which are definitely the most major ones. Herders, they're basically cultivators. They try to collect people. They try to build money muling groups. They try to build carding groups, etc. Brokers, these are the people who actually crack the deal. So let's say you have a new vulnerability or exploit, assuming targeting an Apple. So an exploit on an Apple is something worth like 35 to 350,000 to 450,000 US dollar in the black market. So brokers are the people who can actually broker that deal for you. And again, hacktivists are the people fighting for the cause. Sorry, while I just get a bit of a drink. Alex, can I know how much time do I have left?
Well, we can sort of start moving into questions. If you have anything else, then we can answer. But we can cover, but maybe we can start moving to questions, or if you have
Yeah, I
anything
think
else,
that would be
happy to. I think there's still a lot of people eagerly waiting to hear you, and there's already a ton of questions is coming up into the chat box. So do you want to answer those questions and then cover it, or how do you prefer to do it, Jay?
Maybe what I can do is I'm just going to quickly run into dark web and monetization. Let me try and see if I can finish that off in 10 minutes. Is that fine with you? After that, I think we should be done.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Not sure if you're able to see my screen.
Not yet. We can't see your screen. The screen is on off. So you can share it again. I hope you can share it.
Done.
Yeah, the screen is visible now. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So quickly, I just want to touch on two major topics. One is dark web and second one is on monetization. So basically, there are three layers of World Wide Web. One is called as the surface web, which everybody knows. We have the Google, Yahoo, Hangama, or whatever we want to do, right? Then you have something called as the deep web, which is also a part of the surface web. But this is more of information which your typical search engines cannot find, or you do not have access unless you are made aware of it. And then you have another one, which is dark web. Now, the only major difference dark web has from deep web is it's impossible to get to the dark web using a regular web browser or search engines. And to give you an idea of what is the volume of data that is there, everybody uses this analogy, which is iceberg analogy. So the visible part of the internet is formed somewhere around 4% of the data that's there in the internet. 96% of that is there in actually the deep web. And the darknet is something which is completely off grid. And unless and until you know how to navigate or view it, most of that information is not publicly available. And the reason why darknets exist is basically for anonymity. It's a place where people can openly talk, and it's a place where people can actually go against censorship. And unfortunately, it also facilitates illegal activities as well. So there are basically three popular darknet networks. One is called as a Tor project. You can just download the Tor browser and you can start accessing the onion sites, like they call it. The Invisible Internet Project, which is called as I2P. It's again a P2P overlay network, but it's mostly used for communication and messaging, mainly in defense. Freenet is again a peer-to-peer network, which is used for sharing, storing, and retrieving files. So you can build this Freenet website called Free Sites, and people can then start accessing them. User base for darknets is, mostly you'll have ordinary users, journalists, activists, business and IT industries who want to actually try and find out more or try to secure their products. You definitely have law enforcement agencies there trying to monitor who's going in, what is happening, and a large presence of criminal actors as well. The type of activities that happens, activism. So people start sharing their feelings, expressing their thoughts about government, social causes, etc. Underground trading, anonymity, crime as a service, where you can actually hire criminals to do criminal activities. So you can even buy conventional crime in dark web. Encrypted communication, so that people don't track communication. So most of the terrorist organizations tend to use that. Recruitment, where you actually find new recruits for different purposes, legal or illegal, and also for funding mechanisms. It's a fantastic place to convert black money into legal money. Market types, so it's mainly known for the markets. Some of the things that are sold are goods and services such as arms, drugs, gold, etc. Like I said, there is not much of a policing that happens. You also have another type of market called as multi-sig or trusted markets, where when you're purchasing something, it has to be signed by multiple parties. So what that happens is you then have a sense of security. So the last major case that I know of being traded in such a market was a submarine. Somebody actually managed to sell a submarine through one of these markets. Escrow markets, where you would actually have a central party who would collect the payments on behalf of, so that a person who is executing a service can execute the service knowing that he will be paid, and the person who is paying knows that he has to release the money only if the work is completed. The more specialized ones are invitee or referral markets. So this one requires special invites or special referrals. Most of the times for cybersecurity specifically, to get into these hacker markets, you need to demonstrate that you have compromised a server or you have taken access of something else. And the last one is charges, transaction, and payments markets, which is more like a B2B model. There are markets where you can go in and start selling your stuff. And just to give you a summary of what it looks like. So yeah, this is an example of a hitman network where you can hire a hitman to take down people you want. The most recent case was in 2019, where a Singaporean man tried to hire a dark web hitman to kill an ex-mistress's new boyfriend. The cops did arrest him. You can get credit card details, PII information. First is basically the entire credit card information. And you also get public health information. Illegal substances. And if you want to change your passport, definitely an interesting place where you can buy a new passport. And some of these people actually give you offers. So in case if it is not working, they even do a free replacement for you. And I actually did pull out some of the stats from yesterday. So this was something which came up in our group where people were trying to share LinkedIn username and passwords, people requesting for China databases, Vietnam databases. On the right side, you can see ID cards of Pakistan nationals being sold. So this was from the demo dump that we got from him. The last segment that I had before I close off was on monetization. How do people make money out of these services? One of the most common one is the drop services, where in a nutshell, let's say I have stolen some money from somebody. I would actually buy Amazon products or eBay products, ship it to somebody else, and that person then sells it and transfers the money to me. That's the most common way where people actually make money. So what happens is there's no way of tracing that money source to your account. So to utilize this, there are developed criminal enterprises which offer services. So for example, you'll have somebody who can intercept stolen packages. You would have somebody who can verify if purchases are okay. And you would have someone who can handle any kind of physical person situations. Now, these groups are also used for doing cold calling, recruiting, cashing out at banks and ATMs. So when you get a copy of this PowerPoint, I've actually put in an example of how people do jackpotting on ATMs, where they can cash out an ATM as well. Money mules, similar to that of drop services, but here it's more of people. So one of the most common thing that you know in anti-money laundering is layering. So rather than having an account move from A to B, I move an account from A to C, split it up from C to D to E, and then I send D and E to send it to B. So money actually comes from A to B, but it goes through different layers and through different routes that it becomes pretty difficult to track back who the money was being sent to. Dating scams. This is another version of the dating scam where people actually spoof as people who are interested in dating sites. They come to you and they say that, listen, I need to go. Can you help me book a flight ticket? So they send the money to you. And when you book your flight ticket, you come back and say, sorry, can you cancel and get the money back? So you cancel it, take up the loss and send the money back. But in actually what just happened over there was you got money, which was stolen from somewhere, coming to your account, and you just send the legal money across to another person. So that is one of the common methodologies people use to actually convert hacked money into their ones. We are heavy into cryptocurrency. So coin tumbling is definitely the most common way of doing it now. So most of the criminals now accept payment as cryptocurrencies like Bitcoins or Ethereum, etc. And the reason why they do that is A, it allows anonymity, and it also allows the conversion from one currency to another. So let's say if somebody gave me like 5 Bitcoins, I split the 5 Bitcoins into multiple Ethereums, and that Ethereums is then transferred into Dash, with which I buy Bitcoin again. So what happens is your entire distributed ledger will not be able to track back to who you are and what the transaction has actually happened. So if you're comparing it with your traditional money laundering, it's almost a similar approach, and it makes it easier to have anonymity. At the same time, if you're looking at the standard practices that was there before even computers had, you have placement, layering, integration. All the three are the exact same way money is being transferred in digital crime as well. The only thing is it's much more easier. And the last two things which I had to talk on monetization, another way people make money is selling data. For example, if Pepsi is going to come out with something new tomorrow, and if I'm able to get that data and sell it to, let's say, Coca-Cola, that is money for me. I'm selling intellectual information. If I know that there are 500 people suffering from a particular disorder, I sell it to a particular pharma company which is selling medicine for them. That is, again, a source of money for me. So selling data is one of the most common way of monetizing it. And finally, pump and dump. This is the most time-consuming one, where people actually take compromised credentials. You have hundreds and thousands of breaches. So I'm quite sure your username and password would be there somewhere. Take it up, try and check if they have access to any kind of share trading platforms. If you have, log in, start selling all your shares and buy penny shares, which I would have invested beforehand. And when a lot of people start buying penny shares, the value of the shares start going up. And when it starts going up, I dump everything from my end. So you will be holding up penny shares, whereas I would have actually cashed out on the profit. So that is the final thing that I had to talk about, some of the common ways people actually do make money from cyber attacks. So thank you. I think I extended a bit more over here, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks a lot, Jay. Appreciate. All right, Bimal, would you like to take on the questions, please?
Just a moment. The first question, let me just read. Okay, one question from Santosh is, how can companies train their employees on phishing email? What are the precautions companies can take on this?
Right. So there are different ways that you can train your staff on phishing. So there are agencies or companies which actually offer phishing simulation activities. You can actually hire them to come in and run phishing events on a quarterly or a weekly basis. So the average percentage, if I'm not mistaken, the industry average recommended is 14%, which means not more than 14% of your staff should fall prey for a phishing activity. So what these people will come and do is they would have different teams. Like, for example, let's say your company is ABC. ABC is issuing vaccination for the staff. Please click on this link, and they would actually disguise it to look like it is coming from your company, and it sends to all the employees. And then they keep track of how many people have actually clicked on it. Now, whoever clicks on it can then be sent to an awareness program online, or we can actually take that count out and issue them separate training outside. So that is one way people actually tend to do phishing programs or phishing awareness exercises. The second way which people actually do it is they include it as a part of a new joiner training program. So cybersecurity or cyber awareness becomes a core part of a new joiner.
So what about forensics, Jay?
Sorry?
Forensics.
What about forensics?
Yes.
Can I know what's the question?
Should a company invest in that?
So it again depends on what is your ROI or your expectations. Now, if you are a small or a medium scale enterprise or a medium company, you don't need to invest in having a full-fledged forensics lab. You can have retainer programs from organizations third-party consultants who can come in and do forensics for you. Now, if you are a large enterprise who have a lot of regulatory requirements, who have to keep in touch with the maturity models and who are constantly evaluated, yes, then you would need to have your own in-house forensics team. It need not be sophisticated, hyper. You could start off with basic e-discovery and slowly start building capabilities as it goes on.
But can an SME afford a third-party forensics team?
Yeah, so most of these retainers are basically pay as you go. So you don't have to pay them unless you need them.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, Bimal, we have another question from Dr. Madhu Nambiar.
Yeah, the other question is, it looks like the cyber crimes are mainly directed towards government or central or certain organizations. What are the risks of cybercrime attacks to people or personal computers?
Good question.
Right. So that is what I covered in the second slide. It's all right. So everybody is targeted. It's not just governments or major ones. So let me start off simple ways. Normal person, what are the venues where you get attacked? So first one is malware, which is capturing your credentials. Why would they do that? Is A, to get access to your banking information. So banking trojans would be one of the primary risks. Second one is to try and get information from you that can then lead on to other people or other parties. So let's say, for instance, if you are maybe a head of marketing for a particular organization, now I might get the details and info, and using that, I can then pivot or move my way forward. A simple example would be is, I'm not sure how many of you are there, but everybody knows of Clubhouse, right? So Clubhouse is now gaining popularities, and it is also the best way of trying. I mean, this is how I think, sorry for that, but it's actually the best way for you to compromise normal people. Why? Is whenever somebody logs into Clubhouse, you can ask them to come on call, give a brief introduction. What is your mother's name? What is your father's name? You keep writing that down, go to the Instagram page, do a forgot password reset, fill in those details. You can reset their password. And once I get access to that, then I can start sending out information as that person. And even though if I might not be of a particular value for a person, there would be somebody within my circle who could be of a particular value. A classic example was a high-ranking police officer in India. His account was compromised, and somebody got a message saying that he was stuck in Rwanda and he needed $5,000 for a flight ticket out to South Africa. And somebody did actually pay that money out, since the email came from his legitimate email address. So that is another example where common people or personal computers are being targeted. Another example is job employment scams, where people tell you that you have been awarded a job in, let's say, New Zealand or Australia. We need you to pay 50,000 or 1 lakh rupees. And once you do that, we can start processing your payment. So you transfer the money. After that, you don't hear anything from them at all.
Thank you. I guess that's been answered well. So the next question is, why, from Santosh Nair, why the cybercrimes are not traced mostly? Is it the vulnerability of law or the efficiency of the fraudulent activity?
So that's actually a question which people have been asking for more than 10, 15 years now. So the answer has changed. It has evolved, or rather, I would say. So previously, there were no extradition agreements. There were no joint cooperative cyber activities or task forces, which could basically help apprehend criminals. So if, let's say, you are in UK, you're being targeted by somebody in Australia, then the UK law doesn't hold ground, right? So you can't extradite person from Australia as well. So that is one of the reasons why most of the cross-border tracing of information fails. Now, there are a lot of countries which have started coming up together and putting their head together and started doing it. A classic example was that 3 days back, there was an arrest on an Ukrainian group which was responsible for the Clop ransomware. Before that, they basically took out Lulzsec. There was also an attack on a couple of anonymous activists. So arrests and tracking of people are happening now. Sorry for that. But at the same time, there is a lot of new technologies out there which makes it pretty much difficult to actually trace. So like I said, if your traffic is coming from, let's say, routed Tor nodes, I mean, these are basically IP segments or relay segments where you're never going to be able to track back and find out who was the original person responsible for a particular attack activities. In those cases, it's going to be challenging and difficult. And is that a vulnerability? I don't think so, because these systems were built in such a way to allow anonymity.
Okay, thanks. So I think moving on to the next question. I have this question too in my mind, posted by Mr. Varghese. Are banking or utility companies' mobile apps for payment more secure than using online net banking? Mobile app passwords do not have virtual keyboard, unlike online net banking. So I believe mobile apps are more secured. Second, banking credit card wave cards with wave feature, is it a potential data theft gateway as its RF wave? So I guess there are two questions over here. Firstly, in short, is mobile
first
app
one is yes and no. First one is yes and no. The reason why I'm saying yes and no is if you're using online banking rather than your mobile apps, there is a lot more ways or venues through which you can be compromised. I'm not saying that you will be compromised, but there are a lot more venues where you can be compromised. So definitely, and using an app for accessing your banking applications is a bit more secure than online net banking. But again, I know people who have laptops purely for doing net banking and nothing else. Those people are way secure in their laptops than their mobile phones. Again, what defines security for banking transactions is, have you enabled your MFAs? Do you have your OTP setups? Do you have your tag setups? And are you reading those messages before you input it? That is what matters. Even if you're using apps or you're online, at the end of the day, if you are sharing your information that you shouldn't be sharing, nothing can be helped. Now, banking credit / wave cards, again, like I said, you have RFID proof wallets that are available, which can prevent your information from being disclosed. And again, there are restrictions that different banks have, depending on which part of the world you are, in terms of reducing an impact, even if it was compromised. Like, for example, in Malaysia, I don't think you can spend more than 200 or 300 on a pay wave. But again, if that information is being compromised and disclosed, then that is a whole different one. But again, the only hope that we have is the CVV code does not get released when you do a scan. So that way they can't do online transactions.
Thanks. Again, another question from Varghese. It is, US government has banned certain Chinese brands of IP CCTV camera as they suspect information is viewed in government hackers. Is it possible to program the system to transmit to PRC without users' knowledge? India has two major Chinese CCTV manufacturers in Mumbai and Gujarat. I believe easily 50% of CCTV installed in these brands, HIK Vision is one of them. Companies may have stringent cybersecurity to overcome these issues. Is India blind of this threat, or is it business bigger than threat?
Right. So I'm going to take a diplomatic response over here. Is it possible? Answer is always yes. I have seen that in the past. So I know of one particular country where they ship all their laptops to the people in that company with a backdoor pre-install. So the government can access the laptop whenever they want. It was later identified by a security researcher, and they had to replace all the laptops. So similarly, CCTV scenarios, I'm not saying PRC or all, but yes, that scenario is legitimate. And the reasons why government have allowed a particular system, it might not be because of business or whether it's threats, right? So a classic example would be is Huawei ban. Now, Huawei was shipping with routers in certain versions. That is what has been claimed, while Huawei denies it. But it ships with black backdoors, because of which it has been banned. That shows the capability of that particular organization or that country to set the amount of risk that they can accept. Now, if you are saying that your risk appetite is in such a way that for a particular product to be used in your country or in your organization, it has to meet XYZ criteria and it has to be tested through ABC conditions. And only if it passes all of this can it be accepted, then that is where you actually stand as a leader in terms of risk-based approach for cybersecurity.
Okay, thanks. So the next again question from Dr. Madhu. What are the legal premises, penalties, or punishment for cybercrime?
It differs from different places. I know of cases where people have been sentenced to 125 years in prison. I know of cases where people have been sentenced for 6 months of community services. So it differs from country to country and for type of crime that you do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
next
great.
question.
So we have a question from Sunita. I think she likes to ask it herself. Sunita, please, you may ask your question directly, please, to Jay.
Hey, Sunita.
Hey, it wasn't really a question. Since we had the Colonial Pipeline hack, the FBI actually managed to counter hack them, and I was just making an observation, that's all.
I don't think there was a counter hack that actually happened in terms of recovering the money. So what had actually happened, so just for other people's information, so we recently had a Colonial Pipeline ransomware incident where half of the gas line pipelines was shut down because of a ransomware attack. So the Colonial company ended up paying $5 million in Bitcoins to the ransomware attack. Now the government was able to retrieve a large portion of that, if I'm not mistaken, around 2.6 or 3 million USD. And how it was done was, since it was paid out in Bitcoins, they basically tried to find the accounts or keychains to which the transactions have happened. And they already had taken ownership of the dark side servers, which was because it was dark side ransomware. The government had already taken custody of these ransomware servers, and they had access to the private keys with which they could recall the transactions. So it was more of a manual capture. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I think Dr. Madhu would like to ask certain questions by himself. So Dr. Madhu, sure. Please continue.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So my question is that why colleges and universities continuously conduct this hackathon, hacking competition all the time? Even organizations do that when there is such a big risk in cyber crime. My second part of that is, as a person, I think that how we can reduce cyber crimes as a human being. Thank you.
Good question. Let me answer part 2 first because that's easier. Answer is it cannot be reduced. Cybercrime is there to stay, right? I mean, every time there's new and we've seen the volume of attack going on. I did not touch upon what is in future for cybercrime, because if you start putting in AI and machine learning as some of the new models that are coming out, we are going to see automated attacks happening. So cybercrime is there to stay. Now, the reasons why college and organizations still encourage hacking competitions, that is the way to go. I mean, we clearly lack people to mitigate the attacks. So let's say, for example, the average time which has been provided for a nation state attacker to compromise an organization, the time would be 16 minutes. The time taken for a person on the security segment to try and find out what has happened is roughly around 180 hours. So if you have a compromise of an organization, you don't have sufficient people to help do the assessment. So that is where hacking competitions and hackathons help identify new talents, drive the interest in people, at the same time, also contribute to the society in terms of picking up new stuff. So a classic example, the youngest hacker is a 5-year-old kid. Xbox, parents have a settings where you can't play after a particular set of time. So the kid found out that if you enter the password wrong 5 times and then you press another key in the key joystick, you bypass it. So he became the youngest hacker in the world. So the younger they are, the more they try to experiment.
But I still see that if you teach the kids how to hack, I mean, I see a lot of the things, even voting machine, they went and hacked. So they try to learn the way how to do that, right? So we should probably reducing that hackathon competition. I have seen the universities here run competitions over the weekend, like for several days. And it's a huge thing. I mean, the winning, they give white coat and so many things. So why would we actually encourage our own people to do this and learn the methods to do that?
So it's similar to that of a biology, right? If you want to learn something, you need to start by dissecting it. That is what I always believed in. So unless and until you know how things happen, you will not be able to figure out how do you protect from it. So if tomorrow I come in and if I go to an organization, someone comes and says, I have a DDoS attack, and if you want me to fix it, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars. If I have prior experience of being a part of it, trying to understand at least basic knowledge of what things are, how it works, I won't be taken for a ride. And trust me, if you've been dealing with the cybersecurity companies, there is an old expression that they give, right? So when people come to sell you stuff, they come in jet planes and like people with suits and tuxes, etc. And when it's actual delivery time, people come in wheel cuts. That is how the cybersecurity world is right now. We need people who know their stuff, who can understand what things are being told. And we are also looking at ways by which new things can come out. Now, if you look at majority of the solutions that are dominating now in cybersecurity have come up from hackathons. It's been kids who have been trying to change how stuff works, who have been thinking at it from a different angle. That is what has actually led to developing more solutions that has helped us to identify these attacks. Classic example, if I have a new program and I'm going to publish it to the public, and it's going to have people's information inside there, I would want it to be, I would like to be notified if there are weaknesses in the program before I even bring it online. So that is where hackathons help. People can tell me what my weaknesses are. Rather than I actually get exploited, I can prevent that exploited much ahead. So there are different angles with which you can look into it.
I see. So it helps to identify the vulnerabilities, and you,
Correct.
as you said, we can come up with a maturity model after that. I see.
Yeah, and people also start thinking in that angle. You start looking at it from different dimensions.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So we have thanks, Dr. Nambiar. Appreciate that question. So we have Irfan Malik who would like to ask a few questions. So Irfan is actually our global startup chair for WMC, and he's based out of Sydney. Thanks for joining in late, and I mean this late, and thanks for staying back this late. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Well done to you and your team to organize such a great, relevant session as well. And yeah, it's been a great session and insightful session, and I think very practical, ground up positioning that we've heard in the session. So yeah, thank you again, and well done again to your team and Jairam. And it's been fabulous. In fact, I was working on a policy paper now on a cyber security measures between Australia and India. Obviously, strategic partnership and being part of Quad as well. Now, Australia and India has got closer focus, and cybersecurity has been, established as a core sector for collaboration between US, India, Australia, and Japan. So that I think reinforces the importance of that level to across multiple sectors. So what my question and more view thought, and I want to get your perspective, and maybe I can open it up to the rest of the forum here as well. We organized a session earlier last year, which again looked at the 3 A's of cybersecurity in terms of awareness, accessibility to solution, and then adoption. So how do we create an awareness? How do we provide accessible solutions, both at a business level, as well as, I mean, again, from large corporate to mid-sized to small business and startups, and then individuals as well. So that was accessibility. And then how do we drive adoption? So we figured out that there was challenges across all those elements as well. So I just want to get your perspective, Jairam, on, I mean, again, maybe from the Asia core, Asia that you're looking at from Singapore, Malaysia and all, you know, where is the challenge or where is the opportunity as well in terms of awareness, accessibility to solution and driving adoption? What are your thoughts?
So I've seen challenges in all parts, right? So this one, I'm going to look at my 2 roles back, where I was basically driving national cybersecurity frameworks for least developed countries and most of the UN member states. So if I'm looking at it from that perspective, large corporates, organizations, yes, they do have that adoption. They do have that awareness, which is mostly driven from the regulatory policy sides. Just to meet the regulatory obligations, at least, they do tend to do that. But when it comes to small and medium scale enterprises, that does not exist. And at that point, for them, cybersecurity is a plus service, which is more of a good to have than a must have. And that is something which I've seen happen in most of these organizations, because half of them, especially when you look at it from a startup perspective or small companies that have started moving up, right? For them, their primary objective is to get their product into the market, start building up their foundation, start building up their base. They don't look into things such as secure by design. They don't look into things such as secure development life cycles. They don't look into what would happen if my data is compromised or what would happen if people's data is compromised. Because they are the initial stages. And at that time, I think the biggest gap is there is no agency or central body which steps in and says, hey, listen, we can actually help you guys, and you don't need to pay anything, right? So some of the countries where I've seen this model work is the government has come in and said, we will install the firewalls for you. We will secure your entire perimeter and your configuration. In return, we will be collecting your firewall data so that we can protect our country. I have seen some of the government agencies do that as well. So it's more of how the body comes in to help you out. We can always demand thousands of things from people and companies and say, your fault, you did not do this, you did not do that. But what are we doing as an enterprise, as a country itself, or an organization to help these people? That is a question we need to be asking.
I think it's a fair point. In fact, here in New South Wales, where obviously we've been impacted quite a bit, even during COVID, there have been measures and recommendations similar to what you highlighted. As the business is set up, you know, as part of the registration, you know, there are measures even from the Small Business Commission to prompt for whether you've looked after cybersecurity vulnerabilities from your business perspective as you get into launching the business. So those are measures, but obviously it's more question to prompt an action. But I do see value in potentially some subsidized services or even Gov DC or data center hosting, which they can offer to help protect, but also where possible, you know, some kind of awareness subsidization, subsidies for, you know, cyber insurance, which is another emerging trend we are seeing. So yeah, I think there are some valid points there that you've highlighted, and I think there could be a collaborative thing which the industry and the Gov can together facilitate. So thank you for the thoughts. Thank you.
That question actually reminded me of a discussion I had with the Minister of Telecom of the country, where he said that I don't have enough money to feed my people and you're asking me to invest in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, that could be critical infrastructure that could be impacting. I mean, you are weak as the weakest link in the organization. Someone inadvertently can be exposing things, and that could bring down the whole infrastructure, which could have a huge impact across the community as well. So anyway, I think a fair point. I think for us to reflect on and collaboratively drive that awareness and adoption as well. Thank you, Jairam.
Thank you.
Okay, there is one question from Rajiv Chetan, I think that got missed out in the list. It was, how do we ensure that our digital identity is not stolen, that people duplicate it, which we may be giving to airlines, passport, etc.?
Rajiv Chetan, if you are in India right now, there's a 90% chance that your data is already stolen. because Aadhaar data is already gone. Air India records are out. Indigo data files have been out. So there's a possibility your data is already published. Now, there are websites where you can subscribe to try and find out if your email address or if your particular password has been found as a part of any data disclosure. It doesn't give you 100% confirmation that it has not been disclosed, but at least you'll be able to find out if disclosed, from which website or from which portal was my information disclosed. So that is one way of identifying if your data has been already published or leaked out and then fixing it.
Okay. Any reference sites or anything?
It is called Have I Been Pwned? I can just put it on chat.
Thanks, Ajay.
You just put in your email address, it will tell you where you breached on. There was another site as well. I don't remember which one was it. I'll share it with you on WhatsApp.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Okay, Vimal, do we have any more questions?
No, I think we have addressed all the questions, unless I have missed any.
Okay, so anyone else?
Sorry, I think there was one question which I saw that I wanted to answer.
Sure.
Why should a company invest hugely on cyber securities on a yearly basis or invest on cyber insurance?
Amazing question. Yes, I don't know who asked it.
I think it was Santosh. Yeah, it was Santosh. So that's actually a very good question, and I wanted to answer. So people have the notion that you can get a cyber insurance and you don't have to invest in cyber security. But the truth of the fact is, you can't get a cyber insurance without having security controls. So when you apply for a cyber insurance with Marsh or any reputed ones, like Experian, for example, they will actually send you a whole list of audit questionnaire. What controls do you have? What capabilities do you have? What things would you have? Depending on which your premium would be fixed. So unless and until you have all your basic security controls in there, you will pay through your nose for your cyber insurance. So it's not actually going to sort it out. And even if you look at the fines with which the regulators are coming at, if you are a regulated industry, even if you get a cyber insurance, if you don't meet the basic security controls, it's going to be fined too bad, even which is going to damage your reputation. Yeah, I mean, more than the monetary part of it, it's going to impact your reputations as well.
All right. Okay. Any other questions? I see Joshi George send a message. I'm sure. Do you have a question, Joshi George, or is that a statement? Okay.
I think it's a statement.
I think it is a statement. All right. Okay.
It's a statement for Rajiv Vetan's question. How do I ensure that my password is not being leaked out?
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey,
so,
Alex.
I'll now.
Alex.
Hi, Manjeet. Do you have a question?
Hi, Alex. Sorry to interrupt you. Hi, Jay. Excellent session. Quite informative. I think a lot of areas that we wanted to know more information has been answered. Great session. Quick question here. See, there are these calls that comes in from different countries. These are all God-forsaken countries, Solomon Islands, Angola, and all this. Now, what are these calls basically? Typically, what happens is whenever I keep getting these calls, I keep disconnecting it off and delete it from the records. Now, can you please allude as to what exactly is the purpose of these calls, and is there any sort of risk by having these calls coming in first place? Can you please share some information?
Great question there, Manjeet. Jay, great question there, Manjeet. I'd like to add to that question. It's not just calls these days. There's a lot of WhatsApp messages as well.
Yes. Yeah.
A couple of days ago, I've got a call on a number that actually is not displayed to anyone. It's my US number. Nobody knows the number. Only my company in the US knows that number. I got a call saying that from South Africa, saying that I've actually registered for a conference or an event, and they've asked for I think it's for a course, and they've asked me to actually update my details. I said, listen, even though they sounded as South African, I knew the accent. I said, listen, I don't think I've registered for a course, anything like that. So I disconnected the call. So it's not just WhatsApp. It's not just calls. It's also WhatsApp messages as well. Jay, maybe you can address that, please.
So this is part of what we normally call as vishing. Vishing is something like phishing, but on the phone. So people actually call you up to get more details. Manjit, your question's in my mind. Let me just answer something first, and then
Sure,
I'll
sure.
get into this one. So if you look at how people try and compromise other people, right? One of the most common attack is called as a SIM swap. So let's say, for example, I want to change the details of a particular person so that I can get access to his information. Let's say, for example, I want to access your Maybank, but the OTP or the tag request comes to your phone. I might contact Maybank and disguise as you, telling them that I want to change my number and these are my information, and I get the number changed into my new SIM. What happens then is all the OTP starts coming to my SIM and I can start using them. Similar to that, in vishing, what they tend to do is they would basically call a random person and ask details. What is your banking account number, or have you actually done transactions on this? Have you been doing this, etc. Now, there is a third set of MO which happens with these kind of calls, which is called as tracing. So sometimes people might receive blank emails. Sometimes you might get phone calls where you pick up and they ask, where are you? And they cut the phone. Now, these are agencies which help to track the movement of executives. So people like CEO of a company, where they're moving and all. When you send a blank email, what people don't realize is there will be a small 1px white image inside that email, which when they open up the email, sends the location of the person to the person who sent the email. So they know where the person is located. Similarly, the phone calls help to look at, or they help to find out where the user is from, and they see actually moving there or not. Another modus operandi, or another way by which people tend to make these calls, is also, this is a real life scenario of what happened in Malaysia. I know a lot of people, and especially now Malayali Kudumbam, who got impacted, right? So when they come in through the immigration, they sign up for the Celcom or Hotlink SIM card, and then they go back to their homes. So the wives normally tend to get a call during office hours because they know the husband would be already working in, right? So they would contact the wives and they'll tell them that we are calling you from the Indian High Com in Malaysia. They will say you can check our number on the website. If you check on the number, it would be the exact same number as Indian High Com. And they'll tell you, we need you to take all the money that you have, step out of the house, come to this particular location, which would ideally be around that area. And they tend to either kidnap the person or they take the money away. There have been many cases of this, and the Indian High Com themselves had actually published an article on this. So this is another modus operandi of this. So unless and until you pick up the call, I can't tell you for sure why did they call you. Now, the reason why you're getting the call from multiple numbers is what most of the time people do is they don't actually use their phone and give you a call. They call you using internet. You have what we call as a hot burn numbers, which are basically one-time use numbers. Or these could be a number that could be bought for, like, let's say 1 week or 2 weeks. They are online numbers. And what these numbers do is they allow you to route your phone through multiple servers or multiple destinations. So in case if a police is tapping or trying to find out who was the person who contacted you, they would not be able to find out. That could be the reason why you're seeing it from Angola or from any part of the world.
Okay, I see. Okay, right. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks. Jay, one question I want to ask you before I let you go is, this malware. So I can't name the company because it's something that I can't reveal. It's my company in the US. One of our Canadian clients has one of the government agencies who are clients has unfortunately they have been hacked because there was a backdoor open. Now, I think I've shared this with you in the past as well. So unfortunately, what happened is they had hacked in and they had hacked in our customer, which ended up costing us about $5 million. So is there any way, we can sort of avoid these things in the future? I know leaving a backdoor open is something very common, something because of ignorance and stuff. But is there any other ways that we can prevent these kind of things? I know it's more of a professional question than of a personal question, but I don't know if you can address.
So I think a lot of these people are the same question, right? So there are different solutions that you can do to prevent this. Number one, you can do red teaming exercises. Red teaming is bringing in a professional company that tries to break into your environment from outside, just like how normal hackers do. And what they do is at the end of the exercise, they come back to you and tell you, these are the ways by which we got in. These are the venues. These are the weaknesses. These are the vulnerabilities that you need to fix. So doing that on a regular period, maybe once a year or twice a year, would actually be helpful. It allows you to see what vulnerabilities within your organization can be exploited by an attacker. Number two is what we call as threat hunting or compromise assessment, which is having an in-house team which tends to look at these are the attack patterns or these are patterns demonstrated by an attacker. And on a daily level or a monthly level, depending on the scenario, they try and replay the scenario. So using the logs that is there within the organization, you will be able to pinpoint or pick up these attacks if it is happening or if it has happened and you're not aware of it. And the third one, which is more of a proactive way, is to try and have solutions which can auto-adapt, adjust, or look at user entity behavior analytics. But that would be a far-fetched state for you. The first two should be fairly simple, easy, and they should be able to help you manage.
Okay, I think I need a more detailed session with you. So probably I'll engage my team with you to do that. Well, thank you. But another question is, it's a very simple question. Leading to Manjeet's question earlier, how do these guys get access to our phone numbers? I mean, it's pretty unexpected that somebody's called my number in the US to reach me. I haven't
Not
registered
necessarily.
that.
Let me tell you, the Bangladesh heist attack for $1 billion, it all started with a LinkedIn post. One guy posted, I am a Swift Alliance administrator in Bangladesh Bank. That is all it took. So from that LinkedIn post, they managed to try and transfer $1 billion out of a central bank. You know how your information is, right? So information is there multiple ways, even in the places where we don't even think of. So when I was doing this for law enforcement agencies, we don't look at person and name. We look at them as entities. So let's say I have a company where I know Alex is working. I try and pull out all the Word documents, all the PDFs from that company. I try and look at the metadata or map back that information. And then I start building links and relationships till I find Alex Rajan. Now, if I can't find Alex Rajan, I find somebody who is close to you. I might give them a call and say that I've been trying to get in touch with Alex. I don't know if numbers have changed. Can you give me his current number? Half of the people will give me the number. Or I can go to a publicly available data breach site. I can give your email address, which is available from Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram, or whatever it is. And I can try and find out if there is an associated number available. So there are different venues by which people can actually get their details. And sometimes what also happens is, answering Manjit's question as well, is we have in certain countries where number gets refreshed. So let's say I have a number, I don't use it for more than a year, somebody else get that number. So that is also another way where we get these kind of calls.
So are you saying that our personal life is already displayed and it's already available for anyone to be?
Personal life is not personal anymore.
It's been compromised.
You can,
Absolutely.
you can, right? So what I tend to do is, what I always advise people to do is confuse people. Have so much amount of information, multiple profiles, that nobody knows which is real.
Okay, all right.
That is one way of doing it.
I think Irfan has a question.
Hey, Irfan.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, you have put in the right perspective there. I just wanted to compliment you for some interesting thoughts you shared. So I will be looking forward to collaborating in this region as well. And I think it's a very relevant topic, and maybe we can definitely activate more synergies and collaboration in this space. So yeah, looking forward to working with you all closely.
Sure, and I can also connect you with more specialists in Australia.
Great. I mean, we work closely with YBER, so definitely keen to bridge into Malaysia, Singapore as well. So definitely keen to work with you all. Yeah, there. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely look forward to.
Thank you, Alex, for organizing this.
Yeah, welcoming you. Yeah,
I'll just, I'll sign off. It's close to midnight here. Thank you again. It was lovely joining you all. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Irfan. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night. All right. I think we're done for the question sessions today. So any other questions we have? No.
Thank you very much. It's a great program and a very relevant topic. Really appreciate that you are conducting this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, now I'll hand over to Bimal Pillai for his word of thanks and conclusion of the session. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you all on behalf of WMC Malaysia for participating in this meeting. And again, a special thanks to Jairam for informing us the risk lurking in the cyber maze of ones and zeros. This is really an interesting session, but I won't add much more because you can see on the notes, a lot of people have thanked it about their interest. So it's really great. But for myself, I think it got my thinking cap on. I for sure realized that there are more real risks for individuals and not just big corporation than that I perceived. And so with such a global participation, I don't know what to say. I would say, I cannot say good night. So I would say everybody a good time ahead. See you all in the next meetings. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
If should anyone have questions about cybersecurity, please feel free to write to Jay. He's already displayed his email address, and I think he's available. If anyone can't reach him, please do feel free to reach me or anyone from WMC, and we will always connect you with him. He's more than happy to support you guys. So thank you, and have a wonderful Sunday night and a great week ahead. Namaskaram.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
so
all.
much.
Bye. Bye.